Hey, aloha everybody. Welcome to a dark episode of the Litigation Disaster Tourism Hour. Light, 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 no light. Okay. Light. I'm your host, Mike Dunford, the Questionable Authority. I'm a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. I'm also... Hi, Kapua. Yes. Kapua wants to say hi to the peoples. The peoples are in that camera? No, they're in that camera. Nope, they're in that camera. You gonna say hi to them? Yeah. Who's such a good goof? Who's such a good goofy girl? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Okay. So here we are. Where was I? Lawyer, not your lawyer. Views are my own. Bad takes are my own. Good takes up for grabs. If you find any, let me know. I'd like to grab one. How's everybody doing this week? As a reminder, I've decided to move more or less off of regular politics and move to the tech focus, the tech and law focus that I wanted to have the stream at when I started the stream 4 years ago. I had pretty much decided to do that no matter what. And I think I'm sticking to that. For anybody who had stuck with me primarily for the politics and isn't going to hang around for the tech law, I appreciated you. Still do, but I'm tired of politics and streaming politics. Doesn't mean I'm not going to pay attention to stuff. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do stuff on my own time. But yelling into the void got, yeah. So, let's see. So, yeah, basically variety law streaming. This is beautiful. All right. What else is going on? You know, another day, another dollar. I've decided to fully embrace the middle age lifestyle. I'm listed under politics because there's nothing else good to list myself under. I mean, I don't know what else to list under, genuinely. If you can find something else, let me know. Dr. Hawk, you can ask all you want, doesn't mean I'm going to answer, basically. Just chatting, yeah, doesn't quite work either. Technology might. Tech might. I'll look at that for next stream. How's that? Well, actually, let me see what technology looks like. Yeah. Science and technology kind of works. Is that a game, though? It sort of looks like a game. Alright, stick that and done. Alright, and yeah, they don't have much for categories for finding stuff like that. It's not a game? Cool, we're there. So let's see, what else do we got going? Same old, same old. I've decided to fully embrace middle age, so I've gone out and joined one of those organizations where at pushing 50, I'm one of the young people. It's great. I am totally, completely, and unironically loving it. Go to a meeting, hang out and drink a beer before the meeting, have dinner after the meeting. The symphony? No, it's a little bit less highbrow than the symphony. The Oddfellows. I'm mentioning this because we're going to be moving the stream to Tuesday for the next 2 weeks, but I'm not going to be able to stay at Tuesday as much as I'd like to because every other week that's going to conflict with my lodge meeting. And there you have it on that. Also, ever since I mentioned I was doing this to Akiva, he's been singing the Simpsons song at me. So, there you have it. Uh, all right. Not seeing huge questions on things that are stream appropriate. Not seeing. Robert, I hadn't imagined you playing Contract Bridge at the same time. It sort of seems to fit now that you mention it. Um, yeah, by part of a sacred society keeping the metric system down. That is exactly what Akiva asked me. And since I was telling him this at my usual start time of like, oh, dark early, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Totally missed the reference. Um, Completely missed the reference. Anyway, Netflix class action. I don't know. Um, it doesn't feel to me particularly meritorious on spec, but I can only comment on spec. I haven't looked at the actual filing yet. That's where I'm at on the Netflix thing. All right, so let's talk about do I back the electric car? Complex question there, isn't it? Very complex question. Um, Very, very complex question there. Let's. So let's. Yeah, did I make Steve Guttenberg a star? See, I do have to agree that only a secret society could possibly be the explanation for Steve Guttenberg as a star. That much I completely agree with. Um, but anyway, what do we got? What else do we got going on? Let's talk about WordPress, since that's been the major topic for a while. My expectation, everybody, is that we will talk about WordPress again Tuesday next week. I will stream it Tuesday next week. I will stream it Tuesday the week after. And then we will go back to Thursday for a couple of weeks with a mild digression to Tuesday. Who knows? Um, there will be 1 week that, at least, where we miss a stream in January. Vacation in Japan. But anyway, let's go ahead and. Yeah, let me close that window. And let's talk about where we've been at in the WordPress debacle. So, as I mentioned, I think the last time we streamed on the topic, Automatic had filed a motion to dismiss and an anti-slap motion. I believe I had said that I didn't think that the anti-slap motion in particular was particularly meritorious, but I thought we would get through. That I thought we would get through. They would get past the anti-slap, but they might lose a couple of claims on the motion to dismiss. As is their right. WP Engine responded to the motion to dismiss by saying, "Hey, we're just going to amend our complaint, and that's going to make your motion to dismiss and your anti-slap motion moot." They mentioned this when WordPress decided to ask to reduce their time to respond to that motion. The judge agreed. They went ahead and filed their amended complaint last week. It has added numerous claims. I still have not looked at those in details. My plan is that we will look at those in detail on Monday. And the reason we will do that on Monday is because I'm not expecting that we're going to have a lot of news on the motion to dismiss hearing. On the motion for preliminary injunction. Did I say Monday? I meant Tuesday. I'm jet lagged, guys. I don't know what day it is anywhere. That's my excuse. That's my excuse on that. The rewind. All right, let's try that again. On Tuesday next week, there's going to be hearing on the motion for preliminary injunction, and on Tuesday we will talk about the amended complaint that was filed. That'll give me time to take a more thorough look at it. They've added 9, I believe, causes of action to the 11 they already had. Some of those go into areas that I need to research because I'm not a huge antitrust person. At the same time, the inclusion of antitrust charges kind of feels right. Um, Kind of feels right. MST3K might not just be technology litigation disasters, but I don't know what the full scope is going to be yet. In other words, if something particularly amusing that's not particularly political comes along, I may be persuadable. Uh, so, I do not expect that Tuesday we're going to be talking too much about the preliminary injunction hearing. First of all, I looked at the docket a few minutes ago, and it looks to me like that it's an in-person hearing. So I suspect all we'll have to go by is tweets or skeets from whichever technology reporter is present for the hearing. That's gonna inevitably leave a lot of gaps. Um, so I doubt that we'll be able to say too much on how things are going to go. And honestly, I do not think we're going to see a ruling on that from the bench. I would be very surprised if we get a ruling on that from the bench. And if we do, that's going to be bad news for Matt and Automatic. Because a ruling from the bench will almost certainly go against them. So, okay, if there are cameras in the courtroom, there may be a feed. I'll check on that. And if there is, I may actually be able to do a quick drop-in stream for the first hour of that hearing. I've got to meet and confer in a case of mine after that. Meet and confer. Cease and desist. What is about lawyers and repetition? Lawyers and redundancy. Lawyers and saying everything 2 or 3 times. Anyway, I would be very surprised if the judge rules from the bench. If the judge rules from the bench, it will almost certainly be against Automatic. The reason I'm saying that is because generally federal judges will take something like this under advisement. Meaning the hearing will happen and then hours to days to weeks to sometimes months later, a ruling will be handed down. Right now, there would be no reason to deviate from that if you're going to rule against WP Engine, because a ruling against WP Engine changes nothing in terms of how things are going right now. Right now, there is no injunction that is in place. The result of ruling against them would be no injunction will go in place. So there's no reason or urgency to rule from the bench in that case. If the ruling is going to go against Automatic, I would still expect that it would not be a ruling from the bench. I would still expect that, my expectation is that either way, at the end of the hearing, the court says something like, "Thank you, counsel, I'll take the matter under advisement," gavels out, and leaves. In the unlikely event that there is a ruling from the bench, it is almost certain to be a ruling against. That's almost certainly going to be a bad thing for Matt. Because the only reason you would rule from the bench there is that you're convinced you're going to rule against them, and you want to get the injunction in place as soon as possible. I honestly don't expect that because while the case for irreparable harm gets better every time Matt opens his damn mouth, most of the harm here is reparable. We're dealing with what is fundamentally a business dispute between 2 big companies with money. And that's not the kind of thing that genuinely gets people worked up. So, yeah. But anyway, with that in mind, we looked at the preliminary injunction weeks ago. I'm not going to go through that. Instead, what we're going to look at today are the opposition and reply for the non-lawyers. And I've said this before to the, when we've covered other things. Most litigation in the United States is conducted through what is known as motion practice. In other words, what happens is one side in the case makes a motion, asks the court to do something. And yeah, Robert, the court hasn't shown an unusual degree of urgency here, but the parties have not either. So the court has no reason to. Closest that we've gotten was the request to reduce time on the preliminary injunction thing, and that wasn't asking for much of it. So anyway, you can make a motion for almost anything. And I believe there was once a pro se plaintiff who famously made a motion for the court to go F itself. Thanks for the gift, Son Shahada. As you may imagine, that motion did not go particularly well for the mouvant. But what happens is that, the defendant will move to dismiss. The plaintiff will move for summary judgment. The defendant will cross-move for summary judgment. There will be motions for various things related to discovery. And then, almost always, the case will settle at some point in the middle of motion practice before it gets to an actual trial. There are very, very, very few trials in civil cases in the U.S. Mostly, honestly, because, and I personally, as a litigator, I view that as a feature, not a bug. Most disputes should be resolvable after discovery. By that point, everybody has seen everybody has seen everybody's evidence. You've got a very good idea of where the risks are. You can narrow down the risks. And at that point, settlement becomes much more desirable to everyone. I would agree that it is much more of a bug in the criminal context. Because it tends to overwhelmingly disfavor criminal defendants. In the civil context, not so much. In the civil context, most disputes can be brought to a conclusion through successful litigation, through successful negotiation. So yeah, I mean, I like to say I'm a litigator. I'm not a trial lawyer. I would much rather litigate the case to the point where it can settle. Penalize criminal defendants, thank you. Yeah. All right, so when motion practice happens, it is extremely ritualistic. Well, in the sense that there are 3 filings that make up the core of the motion. DL, you have all the evidence, but if the case hinges on an open question of law and the evidence is uncontroverted, it will get decided at summary judgment. And you won't go to the trial there. Summary judgment is when, in the light of the uncontroverted evidence, there is there is no dispute of material fact, and one side is entitled to judgment as a matter of law. So if the case hinges on an open question of law, and you've gotten to the point where there aren't a lot of facts in dispute, then you resolve at summary judgment rather than at trial. So, in any event, yep, we've got 3 motions. 3 filings that go with each motion. We have the motion, the response, and the reply. Tinker to Everest to Chance. So, just like the famous baseball sequence. Motion, response, or sometimes called the opposition. Motion, response, reply. Motion, response, reply. Motion, response, reply. We did the motion for this motion sequence. We'll do the op and the reply today. Courts are not, in fact, allowed to take judicial notice of just any fact. Like, that's, surreply when lawyers get tetchy, at which point the court almost always gets tetchier. Because a surreply will very often lead to a surreply, and at that point you're going to get a bench slap. Courts are not allowed to take judicial notice of any fact. They're only allowed to take judicial notice of essentially facts that are beyond any possible dispute. Judicial notice is actually a complex subject that I think we actually spent a full week, maybe even a little bit more on it when I took evidence. And when you consider that, there's only 14 weeks in the semester, spending a week or more on a course, on a subject is actually a fair bit. So yeah, the government records say what they say, and yeah, as Salty is indicating, you can take judicial notice of the fact that the newspaper said blank. You cannot take judicial notice of the truth of what the newspaper said, just of the fact that the newspaper said it. So it's a complex area. But anyway, which is one of the reasons why I'm glad that I don't have to go over the request for judicial notice that was submitted along with some of the briefing. We'll go over that when we have to. I'm glad I don't have to do that today. All right, let's drop to the opposition brief. Let's drop to the op brief. Let me change that, and let me make that. Oh, that might be too embiggened. There, still too embiggened. There we go. So we have a 33-page op brief coming from Automatic and Mullenweg in opposition to the motion for preliminary injunction. One of the things I'm going to say here from a tactics standpoint, there may have been a foot shot here. So, to refresh, in order to show a federal court that you are entitled to a preliminary injunction, you have to show that you have a likelihood of success on the merits, some form of irreparable harm you will suffer if the motion is not granted, that the balance of equities, that it is overall more fair to give you the preliminary injunction than it is unfair to the other side, and that it's in the public interest to grant the injunction. You got to show all four of those things, and the first two are the most important. WP Engine is not likely to succeed on the merits. Only gets it gets 7 pages of space, which is maybe not a lot in a 33-page brief, 30-ish page, let's call it. All right, 25. So yeah, you get the third. You might have wanted a little bit more. I suspect that they may have been banking a little bit too heavily on their brilliant idea of let's set the motion to dismiss for the same time, and that they may have in fact planned to use that motion to dismiss briefing as the bulk of their support for the likelihood of success of the merits argument. Unfortunately, all of that briefing has been mooted, and Officer Obi began to cry because he realized that the court wasn't going to look at his 27 8x10 color glossy photographs with the circles and arrows on the paragraph on the back of each one explaining what each one was to be used as evidence. And we was all fined $50. Anyway, the court's not going to spend time reading mooted out motion to dismiss. Just not going to happen. So if that motion had gone forward and been heard at the same time as this, the judge would have been incredibly primed on likelihood of success of the merits. Now they're going to have to make do with only the briefing in this document. Sometimes you take the swing. I can't actually fault Hogan too much for taking that swing. It was a worthwhile swing to attempt, but we're going to have to see how bad it hurts them. Oh, side note question for you guys. Feel free to drop suggestions in the Discord also. If I'm considering getting my blog back up and running so that we've got a place to stick, various recordings, commentaries on the text, links to cases and things like that. Good WordPress hosting recommendations are kind of welcome. I don't want to just jump to WP Engine or something. But something that's relatively idiot-friendly would be very helpful. And if WP Engine is the right choice, I'm happy to go there. But I would just like a little bit, more information, I guess. Right now, I would be going with them because I know of them because of this case, and that seems like a bad reason. Alright, so motion for preliminary injunction asks the court to do something remarkable. It seeks an order compelling Matt and Automatic to provide the party that is suing them access to the website that Matt maintains and provides for free in the absence of any obligation in law or contract to do so and without remuneration. This is a bad idea. Thanks. I'll take you up on that. Probably not today, but I will take you up on that. This is a bad idea. This is... Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I think I said this on Blue Sky, and I'm going to say this again. This response brief that I remember... Green Girl Clear? Green Girl CR? Yeah. WP said they were going to file an audit complaint, so maybe not a great strategy to rely on the merits. Correct. But sometimes you take the swing. That's a tactical choice. It's not... So how should I put this? Probably not the decision that I would have made, but certainly very, very far away from legal decision-making so bad as to be malpractice. In the art of law, it's the kind of thing where, kind of like going for it on third and long. Usually it's a bad idea, but sometimes, you can't say that it's an incompetent choice. Anyway, this was the sentence when I looked at this the first time where I was like, oh, our defense is going to be chutzpah, is it? And yeah, we are pretty close to the actual... We are pretty close to the actual definition of chutzpah at this point. For those of you who are unfamiliar, there are multiple definitions of chutzpah. The classic definition of chutzpah is the quality that is possessed by a man who murders both his parents, then throws himself on the mercy of the court because he's an orphan. My personal favorite definition of chutzpah is the quality possessed by a man who takes a crap on his neighbor's doorstep, then knocks and asks to borrow some toilet paper. Sheer ballsiness is I think part of that definition. Anyway, and then they're chastising WP Engine for being unwilling to post a bond if the court grants the motion. Bonds get posted a lot in preliminary injunction territory. The remedy is tantamount to requiring specific performance of a contract that does not exist, and to force defendants to continue to provide services to a private equity-backed company unwilling to expend those resources itself. WP Engine conflates the open source software with a website located at WordPress.org that is provided by Matt. The website is distinct from WordPress software platform, and both are distinct from Automatic and WordPress Foundation, a nonprofit public benefit corporation that was organized exclusively for charitable and scientific and educational purposes, not commercial endeavors. Which is why they want a huge royalty. Oh no, that's right. The royalty would go to Automatic. Feigns ignorance and reliance on a false understanding that an educational foundation was responsible for the website that provides resources for commercial endeavors. It's a .org. It's a .org. Like, everybody, half the people I look at are still referring to the WordPress Foundation as .org or WordPress.org. The amount of confusion that is out here is legendary. These are choices. These are choices that real people are making. Further, it's apparent that WP Engine itself is fully capable of providing services it purports to need. This court or anyone else could readily access such software and plugins by visiting WordPress.org download or plugins. Oh, the confusion is so deliberate. Rather, WP Engine has only been denied to developer resources that are provided through the website, which allow it to manage the back end of the versions of its plugins hosted on the website. Within days of losing such access, WP Engine was able to recreate much. That is a very load-bearing much of the functionality it claims it lost, and reestablish a connection to its plugins within days by hosting all its plugins on its own website. Could also maintain the other developer resources available on its website if they were willing to spend the thousands of hours and other resources that defendants contribute annually to do so. Never mind the tens of thousands of hours that other members of the community expect. Like, it's an open source project. Everybody puts in time. Also asked the court to stifle speech and competition by preventing Matt from continuing to criticize the engines and preventing Automatic from competing in the marketplace in a way that benefits consumers. It's so hard to read this with a straight face. Specifically, WP Engine seeks to preclude Automatic from calling out its deleterious effects on the WordPress community and from offering customers commonplace incentives and promotions to switch to hosting through Automatic, which they're only taking because Automatic has, through its other actions, rendered Engine unstable. This was written by Neil Catel's web firm. By his crew. They had no trouble writing it with a straight face. That's who they are. Seeks to preclude Automatic from calling out its deleterious effects on the WordPress community and offering customers commonplace incentives and promotions to switch to hosting through another service. The public benefits from requiring businesses to be managed to put in a way that puts the onus on companies to ensure reliable infrastructure in their business model, so they can provide continuity of service without having to rely on free online resources it has no unfettered right to access, and encourages healthy competition to provide consumers with lower prices. A preliminary... Oh my. And while Engine spends most of its motion quantifying the damage it has suffered, it fails to acknowledge that much of the evidence it submits demonstrates that those customers left because of its own poor service and not because of action by defendants. At most, any injunction should be narrowly granted to allow them to continue to access software and plugins. Oh my. Statement of facts. I'm going to skip through the statement of facts, despite the fact that the statement of facts is very important and does put their spin on it. For my lovely wife is home, and yet I'm going to be streaming for almost certainly the next hour. So let's cut that time just a teeny tiny bit. Most of the website's subdirectories also allows web developers to register accounts. This is going to be a very interesting spin on things. I encourage you to read it. Highlighting the private equity ownership. That's a choice. The history of the dispute. We're all familiar with that at this point, right? Well, let's start here, actually. Following WP Engine... Alright, so... On September 25th, 2024, due to WP Engine's growing misuse of WordPress, Matt blocked WP Engine's servers from accessing those of the website. Growing misuse? What changed? Nothing changed. That block prevented their dashboard from continuing to link to updated plugins through the plugin directory. Despite this, the plugin directory remained publicly accessible, allowing WP Engine and its users to download and manually upload plugins as needed. WP Engine was also blocked from accessing developer resources that would allow it to update the software behind plugins residing on the plugin directory, but didn't impact their ability to update, modify, or deploy those plugins from its own website or other repositories. And support comments were made available on the website to direct users to WP Engine for the... That's a... Yeah. And yeah, there's 1,500... Those spoiler. There's a reply brief. I'm pretty sure the number 1,500 is going to come up. Within 5 days, WP Engine had announced it deployed a solution which restored the regular workflow practices by of its dashboard by using and linking its own servers. I don't think that qualifies as normal workflow, but they can hash that out. Following the block from accessing parts of the website, the WordPress development team assumed responsibility for ensuring the plugins previously updated remained safe and secure for the users who had installed them. Translation. Knowingly and willfully, Your Honor. AC... of course there's something called the WordPress development team. That would be Matt. Matt would be the team, right? That's a very interesting way to say we swiped them. To guard against any such threat, the WordPress security team is that the same as the automatic security team? Undertook a security review of ACF. That review revealed the existence of a security vulnerability, which the WordPress security team promptly disclosed to WP Engine. WP Engine never responded to that disclosure. While they did update the version hosted on the WP Engine website to patch, a review of the patch indicated the patch was incomplete. Therefore, they worked to develop a complete patch for the plugin hosted on the website. This is the catastrophic kind of crap that is just completely toxic to open source. Just totally toxic to open source principles. In implementing that patch and distinguishing the resulting plugin from ACF, oh, is that what you did when you kept the download count and the rating? The team forked that plugin and named the fork SCF. Forking is a common practice in the open source community and how the WordPress software originated. Oh, the WordPress security team is different and it was submitted by Automatic's team, so just flat out lying. Nice. The forked SCF plugin was deployed as an update to ACF to address the addition. That's a very long. Notwithstanding the fork, WP Engine retains control of ACF. You just can't get it through the WordPress website. All right, legal standard, yeah, this is the line you always read with if you're the defendant or you're the respondent on the thing. You want to point out that it's supposed to be really hard to get. Irreparable harm is probably the weakest point, so taking that out of order and leaning out. Is there anything there that could be classed as a breach of candor to the court? They're tap dancing near, but I don't think they're there. They're not tap dancing all the way into the minefield, they're just tap dancing around the warning signs. Alright, the sources of the alleged harm are belied by the fact the supposed activities either did not take place or not ongoing. Let's see. Canon always have been able to access the software and plugins. That's still pretty misleading, and I expect to see that addressed fully. They successfully deployed a complete solution. It wasn't a complete solution. If it was a complete solution, the forking wouldn't have been necessary, now would it? At all times they've been able to access and download the software, they just haven't been able to do it automatically. The WordPress software and plugins are available on the public-facing pre-login. Access has never been blocked, denied, or interrupted by disabling of server-to-server, the login-related affiliation question, or otherwise. Okay. The access was only a matter of convenience, and WP Engine fully restored it within days. That's a uncandid heading, which relies on a shifting meaning of it. It depends on what the meaning of it is. There's a deep cut for you. WP Engine also claims harm deriving from a supposed interruption of its users' ability to access WordPress.org resources through WP Engine's administrative panel, which includes downloading from the administrative panel. As previously explained at no time, the problem here is that they're betting on the court being stupid. That's a choice. That's a this is in this is in Northern District of California, where the judges, even judges who don't start tech savvy, get there fast. Often by hiring law clerks who know what they're doing in those areas. Banking on the judge to not pick up on subtle distinctions in Northern District of California on a tech question, that's a decision. Everybody makes choices. The only thing the block impacted was the ability to do stuff through the administrative panel. Importantly, the administrative panel is a tool of convenience. The function of the panel, including the ability to update and install new plugins and themes, all exists elsewhere, including by going directly to the website and downloading those plugins manually. Let me be clear. There was a point in time when I could write my own website in HTML. That point in time was 1990. Man, 4? Yeah. My knowledge peaked at that point. Okay? For a user like me, an administrative panel is not a convenience, it's a necessity. I am going to screw something up if I have to do everything myself and manually. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. I would not view an administrative panel as a tool of convenience. When I'm asking for suggestions on on WordPress hosting, when I'm thinking about, I'm talking about, I want a plug and play solution where I can buy, the site name. Man, now I've got the whole arbitration procedure for domain name disputes, where I can buy the domain name and just do everything pure plug and play or very close to it. I could barely do that kind of thing when I set up my Blogger, when I set up the Blogspot version of the questionable authority in the early 2000s, before, and that got migrated to science blogs, and at that point I had help. I'm no longer at a point where I could probably figure it out, but I would give up because it's not worth it to me in the time. And I suspect that huge numbers of smaller clients, smaller customers, are in that same boat. The admin panel is not a convenience for base users, right? I mean, come on, a lot of y'all are in the tech field. You know that more than I do. Am I wrong? Tool of convenience is too cute by half. Further, any inconvenience caused by this interruption was short-lived and no longer has any effect on its services. That's a stretch, right? A mere 5 days later, our solution has been fully deployed and regular workflow practices have been restored to customers. Yeah, that's not the same as saying that their regular workflow practices were restored. They were able to give something in place that looks the same to customers, which frankly is good for me to know, because without them getting something like that in place, I wouldn't consider them as a solution. I can't consider them as a solution. I can't afford extra time. There is no known ongoing harm or even inconvenience that WP Engine or its customers are suffering. Man, you don't want to put that down on paper when the other side's got a reply brief, brah. And the speed with which they were able to deploy the solution, WP Engine was able to deploy this solution, no longer relying on access to its website servers, indicates that it could have done so at any time, including to mitigate against any interruption of service and enhance security as other companies have done. Full control of its own repository of its own plugins. They just, all right. Unable to tie any purported harm to defendant's conduct, Um, yeah. When you're on fire, you can figure out how to put yourself out pretty quick, yeah. WP Engine does not because it cannot show that its claimed injuries were caused by defendant's actions rather than simply contemporaneous. The evidence that WP Engine itself relies on suggests that those injuries were at best due to the uncertainty arising out of litigation it initiated. And that, my friend, is chutzpah. That is sheer chutzpah. It's also very literally victim blaming. Of course they initiated the litigation. I looked at it and I was like, oh man, these guys are going to have to file a declaratory judgment lawsuit. I mean, it was clear on the fact pattern that they were going to have to initiate litigation. The uncertainty didn't come from the litigation, it came from the actions. And the vast landscape of consumer complaints indicates that its alleged losses are a direct result of its own poor business practices. They're defining that as having relied on WordPress.org in the first place, I believe. In its motion, they cite 3 examples of alleged customer communications. In the first, an individual explains, I'm not sure I'm comfortable until all this drama on your guys' end with WordPress is figured out. I'm not in the game of getting in the middle of a drawn-out legal battle. In the second, an individual notes, with all the events this week that have transpired between WordPress and WP Engine, we would really like to see how things shake out here before locking in. And in the third, an individual references the hostility between the parties. These statements point to no actionable conduct by defendants. Okay, I might have hit myself harder than I planned there. Instead, they reflect the common business uncertainty that surrounds litigation WP Engine itself initiated. You are really banking on the court being stupid there. Any decent lawyer, and while I still haven't looked in detail at the background of this particular judge, you don't generally, it is rare. She's going to have been a decent lawyer before she got there. The judge has been selected. Yeah, you can find who the judge is on the docket list and look up yourself. That's just, I don't have time to do that today, sorry. I'll try to have done a read by Tuesday for that. These communications, and any competent lawyer is going to look at the fact pattern and understand why WP Engine initiated the litigation, and is going to understand that WP Engine's options, win or lose, the options are very much initiate litigation or cave in. I mean, they didn't have a lot of choices. These communications in no way support issuing the injunction. What's more, the landscape of consumer reviews in the time immediately leading up to the dispute suggest there, let's see, beginning in July 2024, so they found 3 bad reviews, basically, from July. Just weeks before the dispute came to a head, customers began commenting on recent changes. That's going to be an interesting technique there. And yes, the judge is relatively new on the bench, but again, Northern District of California, you're going to get tech savvy quite quickly. Over the weeks that would follow, and concurrent with the present dispute, consumer reviews reveal a landscape of consumer anger and upset driving customers to leave WP Engine for reasons unrelated and attributable to WP Engine alone. Let's see. Didn't realize they disable some core functions, move back off, almost don't. If that's an organic review, I'd almost eat my hat. And yet another review from October was turned off by non-responsive automated communications and aggressive marketing. You can't defeat, though. That's the thing is, yeah, you can't defeat. They checked the UK version of Trustpilot rather than the US version. Fun. You can't. The fact that they may also be. You can't say that our stuff isn't causing harm just because a business also has some unsatisfied customers. That doesn't contradict any of the other evidence. I don't think that's enough to drop that. WP Engine's allegations regarding lost customers should be viewed with skepticism. My guy, you're running a website that tracks the number. Sets forth various characterizations of data purporting to quantify business losses. Most of the supporting declaration ultimately represents isolated data. You mean like the reviews you just did? Covering a period of 44 days with no historical comparisons or trend lines. None of that's irreparable. They're economic and measurable. The lost business is reparable, but the reputational harm and the goodwill harm and cancellation requests in new contracts, that's evidence of reputational harm as well as. So that is, that does not, some of the damage is cognizable and measurable, but not all of it. The claimed injuries are self-inflicted, realizing out of its website. Oh my God. They're suing you for detrimental reliance, and you're just leaning into that here. You know, I can't say that these guys don't have ginormous gonads. That's a ginormous gonad-driven statement. We're conceding reliance, Judge. I mean, that's half of the we are conceding reliance and detriment. All we are going to be able to litigate detrimental reliance on is reasonableness. That's choice. Testosterone, it's a hell of a drug. Harm that results from a party's own failure to act severely undermines. They could have avoided claimed economic injury by doing something different than the entire WordPress space. They could have avoided, in fact, economic injury by forking WordPress years ago. Years. WP Engine gambled for the sake of progress on Matt's continued maintenance and provision of the website for free. Having lost that bet, it cannot come to court. Boy, that's leaning in on the guy. That's really leaning in. Not likely to succeed on the merits. The subset of claims are not likely to survive pleading stage. Yeah, I don't think... I'm going to skip past CFAA claim because, frankly, I don't think CFAA is... I've been skeptical of likelihood of success on that all along. I'll look at the reply, but they're going to say most of the stuff that I've said already on that. Unlikely to succeed on the merits of the attempted extortion claim. That failure alone is reason to reject. California law does not recognize attempted extortion from the crime of attempted... all right, so that might take that claim out. They must show that the threats were wrongful. I think you can probably... Get there for similar reasons. No right to seek payment for a trademark license, though that bit purported to grant them the right, but oh, come on, there's no violation beyond descriptive fair use. Are you shitting me? And wait, where did you talk about the okay, so they left something in from an earlier draft, I think. Because or they just say, and WP Engine was plainly violating trademark law here, including by using WordPress marks in a product name without a license. Okie dokie. Interference claims. Yeah. As an initial matter, the interference claims fail on the merits because they continue to fail to identify any contractual relationships interfered with. They identified a lot. Any prospective business relationships allegedly disrupted. They identified a bunch. I mean, the tortuous interference with contractual relations claim is additionally unlikely because the conduct was lawful. Matt was under no obligation to continue to provide access to some or all of the resources on the website, and he had a right under the developer guidelines to fork the plugin, including to address outstanding security issues. I mean, yeah, they identified a bunch. The districts didn't. The website's plugin directory guidelines say that Matt may remove developer access to a plugin and make changes in the interest of public safety. And the plugin residing was not safe and was subject to vulnerabilities, which they couldn't patch because. Jeez Louise. Failure to establish independently unlawful conduct. I think that the attempted extortion might still get there in the UCL. Let's see. Requires UCL, that's unlawful competition. Requires fraudulent, unlawful, or unfair. They've not alleged fraudulent conduct. That's true. The alleged unfair has been rejected. All right, let's see. One case, when defendant terminated a 20-year business relationship, emphasized the importance of contractual breach, in materially addressed in the. Boy, they're really leaning into no contractual obligation to provide, and they're really trying to just lean away from the whole nobody actually knew Matt was the personal owner thing. Balance of the equities, these are. I'm not even going to deal with these right now. I don't think there's a reason to. They're not going to be dispositive. If the injunction issues, it should just be limited to access to the software and plugins. What they're saying is, you should just, if you issue an injunction at all, it should just, whoa. The implication of this argument here is that Matt is asserting the right to restrict. It is actually kind of asserting a right here to restrict the ability to download the stuff that's currently downloadable without login. Um, or at least they're saying that if an injunction issues, it should be limited to an injunction against restricting the ability to download the software and plugins available. Now, recall, that's the access that they say that WP Engine still has. So what they're saying is that they should be enjoined from restricting stuff more. Because that injunction would ensure that they still have access to the updated software and plugins. But then they're also asking for WP Engine to post a bond to compensate Matt for any services he's ordered to continue to provide. So that's suggesting that actually Matt has the right to charge everybody to access to access WordPress.org. You know, when I talked about that's, do I think that that's what they want to do? I don't know. This may be a litigation move, and this may be more driven by the aggressiveness of their legal team, but it does also follow, as Kevin just points out, from I own this, not the foundation, and I have no contractual obligation. So, yeah. I mean, what does keep Matt from doing that legally, not morally? Other than promissory estoppel and other than community pressure from the broader WordPress community? Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. Guys, look, let me give you a hard truth about open source. Let me give you a the WordPress licensing scheme, I don't even need to look, Salty. Because the licenses are going to be stock. The licenses are going to be stock open source licenses. The stock open source licenses will not provide the right to access from any particular repository. They allow you the right to, copy, distribute yourself, but they're not going to include a right to access via any particular repository. So there's no reason to look into the licensing scheme to answer those questions. And yeah, I assumed GPL, honestly. And the thing about GPL is that, look, a lot of hard open source truths, okay? First of all, we all know a lot of those licenses are spit and baling wire. That's a hard truth, guys. I'm sorry. Most of the reason that open source works as well as it does is because of the community's commitment to making open source work. Open source works more on norms than on the strength of the licenses. There are, and we've seen bad actors in other spaces. We've seen a fair amount of this, actually, with attribution trolling in the Creative Commons license space. It's not that they're not as open, it's that there's enforceability issues. A lot of it. Where there are not enforceability issues as a legal matter, there are enforceability issues as a pragmatic, cost-driven matter. You know, let's put it this way. Let's say that one of you wanted me to do a walkthrough for you of this case and your risks and everything else. Probably me doing a walkthrough of this case and your risks, minimum, I'm looking at, let's say 5 hours for a reasonable block of time. That's actually probably shorter. That's actually probably a short estimate. But let's say 5 hours, nice round number. That's not even a full workday for me. My bill to you for that at my rack rate, and again, I am a cheap date. For somebody who works in this space with my credentials, I'm a damn cheap date. But my bill to you for the 5 hours just to do the walkthrough, the rack rate, yeah. Bill on that point is going to be over $2,000. That's to tell you where you are. Litigation, you are looking at, so rack rate's a term that comes out of the hospitality industry. Rack rate is the room rate that's at the back of the hotel door. So yeah, that's the standard no discount rate. Rate for me to draft a complaint in a case like this, you're probably just to draft the complaint, not to litigate the complaint. To draft the complaint, file the complaint, serve the complaint. I doubt I could do it for under 25. Open source depends. The viability of open source depends on people functioning as decent people in goodwill and not suing each other over bullshit. Okay? You all know the meme picture, right? That's the little teeny tiny stick that's holding up the entire open source system, is people doing open source in good faith. Good faith is the itty bitty stick under all open source projects. Every one of them. That's the hard truth if you're working in an open source space. Now, does that mean I think you should be afraid? No. The truth of the matter is that most of the time, most people work in good faith, on stuff. But it does mean that when somebody goes just completely off the rails, as seems to be happening here, it becomes a risk for the entire community involved in that project. The ability of a single bad actor to destroy the entire project is, yeah. And to clarify the 25, I meant 25,000. Drafting a full complaint for a case like this is very likely to be a full week's worth of work. Y'all don't sue people and don't get sued by people, guys. It's not cheap and it's not fun. Okay, your average lawsuit is, as my civil procedure professor said, a swirling mess of human pain. That's the hard truth. I like litigation. I enjoy litigation. I think I'm not terrible at it, and I'm getting better by the day. It's rewarding, but I'm going to be one of the only people having fun. And you're going to be paying me painful amounts of money to do it. Litigating this particular case is almost certainly cumulatively into seven figures. Litigating pretty much any case in this day and age is a six-figure enterprise. And yeah, by the way, 40-hour estimate for something like that is me being generous. And not being generous to me. That kind of 40-hour, 25,000 estimate, that's not the rack rate estimate. All right, so anyway, arguing about the amount of bond and the conclusion. Let's look at the reply brief on that jury note. Isn't Matt using an expensive law firm for this? Matt's using an expensive law firm that is headed by one of the most expensive lawyers in America. The lead attorney that Matt has retained for this is one of the most expensive lawyers in the country. All right. The reply in support. Let's see how Rachel Kasabian, or is it Kasabian? I'm sorry, Rachel, if you ever see this. I hope you don't, but if you ever do see this, I'm sorry if I'm mangling your name. Let's see how the Quinn Emanuel team does on the reply brief. On the very same day, defendants filed their opposition to WPE's preliminary injunction motion, arguing that an injunction should not issue because WPE has suffered no harm and certainly none caused by defendants. Defendant Matthew Mullenweg announced from a public stage with a wide grin on his face and a microphone in his hand, and I'm laughing now. That is a amazing opening. That is... Oh, painting a picture with words indeed, Salty. That is good-ass legal writing right there. That is like somebody trim that and put it in the next edition of the legal writing textbook writing. Since this started, they've had, we estimate, tens of thousands of customers leave, so, I think over the next few weeks, they're actually going to lose far more than 8% of their business. We're at war with them. We're going to go brick by brick and take every single one of their customers. If they weren't around, guess what? We'd happily have those customers, and in fact, we're getting a lot of them. Oh my word. Oh my. Against the backdrop of Mullenweg's dispositive admissions. Dispositive is a nice word. See, one of the things you're paying for when you're paying, you're paying for, word choice like that is what you get with good experience. Good attorneys, good writing. Dispositive is a nice lawyer word. Against the backdrop of Mullenweg's dispositive admissions, it's difficult to take defendants' opposition arguments seriously. But it is easy to reject them as they are, charitably put, meritless and uninformed. Defendants admit that they have harmed WPE as they set out to do and have made multiple threats of future harm as well. Under controlling precedent, the type of harm defendants have chosen to inflict, such as customer losses and reputational damage, is indeed considered irreparable. This is an amazing opening. This is really good legal writing. I say that reluctantly again because I'm opposing counsel to quit Emanuel, and at least and I don't want to admit that opposing counsel to me is ever going to be able to do anything better or as well or good. I'm mostly joking there. Quinn's a big law firm. That is really first-rate legal writing. What they've done here is they've painted a gorgeous picture. They've dropped in a large chunk of very good, very damaging fact, and then they've used that fact to squarely hit the weakest part of their own, previously weakest. They've hit the area that they need to hit the most. They're actually using this to say, not only is irreparable harm not our weak point, it's strong and getting stronger. Nor do defendants' merits arguments fare any better, as they too appear to have been written in an alternate universe where defendants' actions and admissions do not exist. Defendants' conduct reflects a textbook case of attempted extortion, intentional interference, and unfair competition. We're likely to succeed on all three of its claims presented here. The defendants' admissions also confirm that the injunction would impose no admission or hardship whatsoever on them. Indeed, when recently asked about the pendency of these preliminary injunction proceedings before this court, Mullenweg nonchalantly, usually I don't favor using adverbs in fact descriptions. I actually sort of like downplay, but that's a good use of an adverb. If we lose the injunction, what happens? We have to go back to the state of what they were doing beforehand, where they access WordPress.org, so that's fine. So, the approved solution to something like this is you get your client's electronic devices and you run them over with construction equipment. Like asphalt rollers, okay? That's the approved client control solution in this case. In fact, this is the kind of thing where you may or may not want to take them out of the client's pockets before you roll them over with the construction equipment. That is just beautiful. And of course, it should be no burden on anyone to stop extorting their customer and interfering with its customer relationships. WPE respectfully requests that an injunction issue as soon as possible before defendants can be dumber. Sometimes spoliation is better. No, I'm not joking. That's not spoliation as long as you've got the backup first. It's not spoliation as long as you got the backup. Um, you know, firing artillery on a dangerous, stupid, getting solution. Oh, oh my God. This is the kind of client control solution where you start to seriously consider client control solutions that involve a trip to Big Steve's House of Leather and Vinyl. You start to consider latex and straps and cases. Big storage cases. Defendant's own admissions conclusively demonstrate, that I'm pretty sure that's a bigger section heading font than they were using previously, and I'm here for it. Oh, yep, and they called out trying to direct the court to other briefs. Nice. So let's see. Defendants claim that WPE has not been harmed contradicts Mullenweg's own admissions. Defendant, the safe word is dispositive. DJ Darkwing making the first time chat count. Defendant's lead argument, astonishingly, it's another adverb, but adverbs are the first things I try to cut when I need more space, and this is one to keep. Defendant's lead argument astonishingly claims that WP has not shown that it's being harmed at all, much less by defendants. Defendant's own admissions conclusively refute that baseless argument. Defendants have expressly taken credit for disrupting operations, interfering with customer relationships, hurting valuation, and other harms. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm also... Darkwing, you're doing well today. You're doing very well. All right. There's an analogy that I hate because it's way too overused, and yet, it's that thing people say about jazz. Now, I wouldn't know if this is actually a thing in jazz, because I could not carry a tune with a bucket and two handles, much less do anything complex like jazz. But everybody always says, right, that the thing about jazz is that first you got to learn all the rules so that you can learn how and when to break the rules. My rule of thumb, I'm not saying that this is like a universal rule of legal writing or anything. My rule of thumb is that the right number when you're doing a for example is 3. Okay? For example, with bullet points is a holy hand grenade scenario, is what I'm saying here. 3 is the number to which thou shalt count, and the number thou shalt count is 3. They dialed this one up to 7. And that is... sometimes you break the rule. And yeah, 3 is the number that establishes a pattern. Exactly. It's the smallest number. More starts to feel like loading in. But in this case, Mullenweg threatened that if WP did not pay up, defendants would take a scorched earth campaign. take a nuclear scorched earth nuclear approach. In a response to a tweet speculating that Automatic would buy WPE for $2.5 billion plus stock, Mullenweg responded, "I don't think they're worth a fraction of that now. It's a distressed asset." Mullenweg, "I suspect there are going to be millions of sites moving away from the ACF plugin." Mullenweg, I guess you'll have to wait and see why people might not trust ACF as much going forward. Mullenweg, "You know it's been widely rumored that they were shopping around and trying to sell WP Engine earlier in the year, trying to get a $2 billion valuation. If I were valuing Engine, it would be under their revenue right now. They're losing a lot of customers. We're at war. We're going to go brick by brick. Since this started, they've had, we estimate, tens of thousands of customers leave." That is rubble bouncing indeed, Wombat Control. And sometimes you bounce the rubble. Moreover, defendants do not deny that Mullenweg has promised to find additional ways to harm WPE. Mullenweg promising, "Oh, there's more." Mullenweg bragging, "I have a lot to work with." Mullenweg promising more surprises. Four. Over the next few weeks, they're actually going to lose far more than 8% of their business. They could have done without the... that's another good call. And as a matter of common sense, it should surprise no one that waging a self-proclaimed nuclear war against a company with the stated intent to destroy their business would foreseeably lead to harm, including loss of customer trust, goodwill, and market share, particularly given who Matt is. Defendants' attempts to deny the obvious fall flat. For instance, cherry-picked online reviews do not support the insinuation that it's a poorly run company, let alone that it could not be injured by a nuclear war. This is such good writing. This is really good legal writing. I mean, win, lose, or draw. This is good work. In truth, the source shows that WPE has an average rating of 4.7 out of 5. Automatic's trust point rating is 1.8, and Automatic's WordPress.com has a rating of 1.6. Defendants' related argument is to call the harm self-inflicted. Defendants are wrong again. Beautiful short sentence. Short sentences in the middle of long sentences are an art form, and that is a well-done art form. Ordinarily, I would love a 3-word sentence there, but the again does the work on that one. Defendants do not have the unilateral right to arbitrarily exclude WP from WordPress.org, and in any event, being on the receiving end of a nuclear attack does not make the results of that attack self-inflicted. Defendants' claim that they face no threat of harm cannot be reconciled with their own admissions and should be rejected. The claim that it has all the access it needs is false. Defendants claim that they have not blocked WP from accessing the software and plugins, and thus everything is fine. That is false. They're still blocked from the administrative panels. This is not a tool of convenience, but is critical to the functioning of the business. Yes. By blocking the access, defendants have prevented WP from updating its own plugins. The domain where, incidentally, community guidelines require all plugins be loaded to and updated from. Blocking access also prevents customers from downloading these themes and plugins from the administrative panels, among other things. Defendants have admitted the blocking access is inflicting harm. Mullenweg has bragged that since the blocking, WP hasn't been able to make updates, plugin directory, theme directory, and Openverse work on their sites. When soliciting WPE's customers, defendants freely admit that WP Engine's access to WordPress.org has been restricted, which could impact sites. That is beautifully understated. An average lawyer, and an average lawyer is a competent lawyer, right? An average lawyer would go whole hog on screaming about they're doing this when soliciting customers and link that to the other causes in action and everything. But sometimes you take the calculated risk of letting the court draw its own conclusion. This is a case where they are, when soliciting WPE's customers, leads the court right to the conclusion. You don't need to push the nose down into it. That is good writing. And Mullenweg also claims that the mirror of the plugin repository runs more slowly, such that he tells WordPress users that he wouldn't recommend touching it with a 10-foot pole. Defendants do not contest that WPE is being harmed by the other technological bad acts. They've expropriated the plugin, a hugely popular asset set with 2 million customers responsible for paid paid subscriptions. Also redesigned the WordPress.org login screen to require the checkbox, thus requiring, under implied threat of sanctions or other harm, that WPE's customers, users, partners, employees, and vendors must choose between ending their affiliation or using any resources. They can't do both. And the blocking means that WPE cannot effectively maintain and support its plugins because it can't communicate with developers. The other arguments mislead as well. There's a little over-reliance on footnote here, but you get enough less space in the reply that is a thing. And yeah, also getting the judge to read the affidavit closely. It's a very good writing. Defendants do not even address whether those actions inflicted harm. They're in no position to question the customer loss evidence. Whether there are losses is not in dispute for the simple reason that, remarkably, another adverb well used, on the same day their opposition was filed with the court, Mullenweg bragged publicly that defendants have corroborating evidence of customer losses and believe more are coming, although they strategically choose not to submit their evidence to the court, perhaps because it unequivocally contradicts their own opposition argument. Everything after the M dash could have gone on that one. I'm going to pick that nit. Everything from there could have gone. That was that's a little cute. Maybe not too cute, but, and certainly far less cute than everything in the op, but that was a little cute. Since this started, we estimate tens of thousands of customers leave. Could have really, you used the full quote earlier, I would have, given how much they're using footnotes, I probably would have trimmed that down to see if I could, find enough to fit something like that back up toward the body. But these are small nits. This is still exceptional legal writing. WPE invites defendants to bring that corroborating evidence to the 26th hearing to eliminate any doubt. That's very cute. I want to love it, and I'm not loving it. I want to love that bit, but I'm not loving that bit. I understand the urge, maybe a little far. Comments leave no room to doubt that not only have defendants' actions caused the injury, but it's what they intended, yeah. The harm is indeed irreparable. They urge that the harm, if any, is not irreparable, but threats of ongoing harm are regularly recognized as being irreparable. Nor does it matter, as defendants claim that some cases cited were from the trade secret arena. Defendants provide no law or logic as to why customer loss, market share relationship, and goodwill damages would be irreparable for one cause of action but not another. Always a good point. Argue that because they provided some data about how many customers lost, it must be that all harms can be remedied. Not so. The headcount statistic does not put a value on the trust, goodwill, reputation, market share, or damage. Indeed, even with respect to just those customers, the data is not just headcount, not projections of revenue. The rent-to-center cases only confirm the merits. That's a good term to phrase. When you can turn the other side's case back on them, do it. An injunction was upheld because allowing a new store to enter the market would risk damage to advertising efforts, recruitment efforts, or goodwill. WP has shown a risk of similar categories of harm. The other cases are in opposite. Disputed facts, yeah, the judge actually gets to make some fact determinations on preliminary injunction. Tentative, so yeah. WP has shown a risk of similar categories of harm. The other cases are inapposite. In one, a stadium sued the NFL to try to block a bylaw regarding team movement, but no team had even requested permission. So the injunction failed because there was no showing of threat of any injury, and an employee who was in the 1974 case, an employee statutorily entitled to back pay could not show irreparable harm. Likelihood of success. Defendants concede the sliding scale approach where a plaintiff need only show serious questions on the merits as long as other factors are met. Injunctive relief preserving the status quo ante is appropriate as serious questions are indisputably exist. Good use of the standard of review there. Mullenweg urges because he owns the WordPress.org domain, he can do as he pleases with it. Denying access cannot give rise to any form of liability. Not so. Defendants cite no cases holding that ownership of property creates an absolute immunity from liability with respect to how it's used. Courts have required websites to unblock users who have been excluded on unlawful grounds, citing HiQ Labs. HiQ Labs is a good case, which they didn't cite nearly enough I think, in the brief in principle, the main brief. Defendants concede feels cute isn't merely a statement of the standard. There are different formulations of the standard. I think it's good to... cute, but not overly cute. Not enough to ring a bell. See also Epic Games versus Apple. Simply put, my website is not the excuse they posit. Even more importantly, as the lawsuit will demonstrate, Mullenweg has enticed investments into the ecosystem by hiding his supposed right and his apparent willingness to demand payments merely for operating WordPress technologies. Good call. Call out, in addition to defendants' repeated assurances that WordPress was free and open for the world, and would even be beyond Mullenweg's lifetime, statements affirmatively made on Mullenweg's own website affirmatively represent no one owns WordPress.org. WordPress.org is not owned in the traditional sense. No one owns WordPress.org. WordPress.org has no traditional ownership. Simultaneously, for more than a decade, Mullenweg has held WordPress.org out as a community asset and invited, if not required, community members and many others to donate thousands of hours of free labor to create and improve its content, purportedly for the community benefit. At no time did Mullenweg ever disclose to those volunteers that their labor was serving to personally enrich him, and he secretly reserved the right to ban any or all of those volunteers if he felt like it. Defendants must face the consequences of their deception, manipulation, and greed. Further, and despite defendants' promises that WordPress will forever be an open platform, defendants now try to fault WP for not securing a contract to guarantee access to WordPress.org, but statements on WordPress.org itself represent that there's no entity to sign any agreement with WordPress.org in the first place. This is what you get this is what you get as a lawyer when you don't do your own research. This is what you get when you overtrust what your client is pitching. Guys, don't hire a lawyer who trusts you entirely and implicitly and completely. Hire a lawyer who is going to view what you yourself are telling them is going to view it from the perspective of a bad faith viewer. Hire the lawyer who is going to do the research themselves. It's more expensive, but you're better off. It's more expensive because there's extra time involved in, looking at the WordPress.org website for yourself. But yeah, if you shop around until you find the lawyer who agrees with you 100%, you get the representation you deserve. You want a lawyer who is going to trust what you say but verify. That's what you want. You want a lawyer you've got a good relationship with. You don't want the lawyer to be, busting your balls on absolutely everything, but you're gonna absolutely want a lawyer who's gonna verify. I don't think these representations were made by multiple individuals, including WordPress.org's own moderators, many of whom are employees of Automatic. I don't think it's going to matter that much, Salty. Nor are there any terms of service warning that if a user is deemed by Mullenweg to not be contributing enough to his WordPress.org website, man, you should have taken the extra trouble to push his to the next page. Mullenweg's ownership arguments further undermined, given that WordPress.org has always operated as and been understood as a community asset. That is, WordPress.org is hard-coded into how WordPress is designed to work. The open source code built by the entire community references WordPress.org. There's your 15. Who was wondering about the 1500 number? There you go. Such as for installing new plugins, themes, updates, improvements, patches. Indeed, developers are required to develop updates to flow through WordPress.org. WordPress users are warned not to use any versions of WordPress hosted anywhere else. Although, despite that warning, defendants have created a situation where WPE has no alternative but to do so. By design, software cannot stand alone from WordPress.org. They're deeply intertwined. In some, the unilateral declaration of omnipotence free from consequence is wrong as a matter of law, fact, and equity. Oh, you should have dropped that last sentence. You should have ended the paragraph there. Again, these are small nits. These are the things where, like, if you've got the ability to put it down for 2 days, then pick it back up before you submit, you find them. But, it would have been so much nicer to end it on omnipotence free from consequences, wrong as a matter of law, fact, law, and equity. Likely to succeed on the CFAA claim. Yeah, when you have the law, pound the law. When you have the facts, pound the law, facts. When you have both, go to town. Man, it's a dance party when you've got both. I'm still very unclear on I'm so unclear on the CFAA claim that honestly I'm just tuning it out as an irrelevancy until I see what the court says on it. I still think that it's a reach. Because I'm not, but that's not because I don't think this kind of harm isn't happening. It's that I'm just not sure that this kind of harm is cognizable under the anti-hacking statute. And while technically this is correct, fundamentally it's the anti-hacking statute. So, and I mean, Pulte Holmes I'm really familiar with. Hell, like my first big writing assignment in law school was a CFAA thing, and for the purposes of the exercise, I was in the Sixth Circuit. I hate Pulte Holmes because I had to get too familiar with Pulte Holmes, but I'm just not positive that this is the right kind of harm. We'll just have to see, though. It's a creative claim. It's a colorable claim, meaning it's not frivolous. The argument is there. I'm just not sure I'm buying. I'm not sure I'm not. I want to see how this one goes. At the same time, I'm also going to say that, there is a certain, if you're not losing at least some of your claims on a motion to dismiss, you probably haven't pled aggressively enough. This is the classic high-tech variation of old-fashioned extortion that the section was... The cite to the Senate report here, though, in particular, denying access to authorized users it's a good argument. I'm just not entirely convinced. But common law can, and this is good. They're acknowledging that there's differences of opinion here. So this is decent. So Sungak, it's not that they're saying hacking, it's that it's an anti-hacking statute. Wait, you can cite to legislative history in the U.S.? Yeah, it's disfavored, but you can do it. That said, this judge is a Biden appointee and is almost certainly going to be much more receptive to a legislative history argument than a Federalist Society judge would be. Federalist Society judges tend not to like to use legislative history in as an interpretative aid. More traditional left-wing bench appointees tend to be a little bit more oriented to legislative intent. Sungak, I'm using anti-hacking here as a shorthand, but that was the fundamental intent behind the statute. And moreover, here the extortion attempt is ongoing. This is true. And they could end all this tomorrow definitely reinforces that. And whether they engaged in extortionate facts, the facts are uncontroverted. They demanded an absurd amount of money for a purported license that was not needed under the threat of causing harm, gave them hours to pay up, chose to file a declaration in opposition. Curiously, he didn't say a single thing about the text messages, didn't dispute them or attach any other contemporaneous messages. The silence is revealing, this more than suffices to state a claim and to meet the burden on the emergency motion. Maybe. We'll see. The extortion claim fails for not showing the conduct was wrongful under the standards used for that. Assert defendants must show had no right to seek payment or had a pre-existing right, but even if that, they would only have to show one. That's good. Likely to succeed on the interference claims. Yeah, I think that one's the one reason why irreparable harm has always worried me more than likelihood of success. Because this absolutely seems like classic tortuous interference. So, yeah. Just rolling through. WordPress.org has no terms of service and the security concerns were a sham. I think that, overall, again, this very much strikes me as classic tortuous interference. The unlawful competition. I'm not an expert in that area, but it also feels solid, and public interest all feels good. Should not narrow the injunction. should be good, and only minimal bond. Mullenweg admitted that the entry of an injunction would be fine. I mean, that alone supports minimal bond. As does they're still operating it for free for everyone else. The marginal cost is likely a tiny fraction of the amount cited. Agreed. Accordingly, if the court is inclined to require any bond, it should be de minimis, not their whole budget for 2 years. Yes. Used absolutely the entirety of the space, but well done brief. Wow, it got dark out and I didn't turn on the overhead. Really should remember that before the stream next time. Also, I fulfilled my double length promise. All right, you guys got questions? I'm not getting up to turn on the light because the light is all the way the hell back there. I need to remember that you're like 10 seconds in my future and I need to give you time. And I should fill the empty space in those 10 seconds better than I do. Should you do crimes? Stop breaking the law. And I'll keep it clean. Yeah, don't sue people is the best advice a litigator can give anybody. I mean, sometimes you got no choice. I don't think WP Engine had choice. I mean, I said that the very first stream we covered that. Should Shep do crimes? Shep is my favorite, and I don't have, all my clients are my favorite clients, but Shep is my favorite client. Am enjoying the not moving to turn on the light part. Yeah, I'm going to turn on the light when I get up in a few minutes. I'm also going to go make myself some miso or something. Recent paper that suggested that LLMs actually do reasoning when asked to reason rather than just recall. No, but it doesn't surprise me. It's just that the kind of reasoning they do is restricted. I mean, the reasoning they do is what words are most likely to be the kind of words that the viewer wants to see next. What image is kind of sort of the image that the viewer most wants to see when the viewer asks for, X. It's not... Is that reasoning or that's kind of on the border, right? Yeah, spicy autocomplete. Still, I still very firmly maintain that as genuinely exciting as I find a lot of generative AI, and I do. I really do. I don't like the ethics of how it was developed. I don't like the environmental impact. But if you can, mitigate those things, it does some fun stuff. Not world-changing to the extent that proponents have suggested, but it's a kind of cool set of tools that has some use cases and stuff. But you are not... A generative AI... Vincent Work says, a generative AI trained entirely on the writings of Scalia and Lord Denning. I know this. We are playing Jeopardy. Who is Samuel Alito? The paper's about mathematical reasoning from general principles. Okay. That's recall what I'm thinking of. I don't know which I'd say. What I would say, though, is that I'm still fairly firmly in the camp of Gen AI isn't going to lead to unrestricted... Gen AI is not going to lead to unrestricted the mother load on AI. It's not going to get you a general AI without... developments that are a change in kind, not just improvements in degree. AGI, thank you, yes. That was where my brain fart was happening. Doggy and wife, I believe, are out together. So we saw Doggy at the beginning of the stream, Pangolin, but I think you're going to have to go back to the VOD for more. What thoughts would I share for people considering law school? Don't. No. Seriously, think about why you're considering it. Look at options. If you are going to consider law school, thing to keep in mind and a thing to know going in is that law school resets how you think. If you pass, anyway, most people do. But law school is a reset in how you think. Your past knowledge, your past experiences can very much make you a better lawyer. And if you're coming, from particularly a software engineering background, everybody's going to be wanting to talk to you about patent law and that kind of thing, and that's fine and that's good. Don't lock yourself into that. Give yourself the opportunity. Give yourself the opportunity to go in different directions if you're going to do it. Go in with your mind open to all of the possibilities, not just what you think you're going to be most interested in. But also know that if you go into law school is going to be a kind of break you down and rebuild you type experience, in part because it rebuilds how you look at a lot. I mean, the biggest thing that law school is intended to teach you is how to think like a lawyer. And when people say, how do you think like a lawyer? I'm like, you just do. And I mean, part of it's, it's a different way of looking at problems. It's a different way of breaking down problems. It's also a different way of putting types of information together to find solutions. I went to law school late after doing a whole lot of different things earlier and loved it. I also wound up in a completely different area of law than I thought I would. When I went in, I thought I was going to take a biosciences background into environmental law. Logical, right? Makes complete sense. I also figured that contract law was going to be all loopholes and fine print and etc. And then I discovered that environmental law is actually a lot more about fine print and detail and that kind of thing. Contract law turned out to be common sense and intuitive to me. I loved it. So I wound up in a completely different direction. If you're going to go to law school, give yourself that much freedom. And if you want to go to law school because everything about law fascinates you, and the more time you spend reading legal pleadings and filings, the more fascinated you are by the kinds of reasoning you see and the type of arguments and the way the argument is our art and things like that. That is an objectively silly reason to want to go to law school, and it's literally the one best reason to go. For real. If you're reading shit like we just looked at and you're fascinated by it and you love the details and you want to learn more about under the hood and how it works and things like that, objectively it's a really dumb reason to go to law school, but it is, in my view, the best possible reason to go to law school. You should go to law school because it's calling to you as a vocation, not because you want to do it as a job. For somebody who's in law school, whether or not you should cite, whether and how to cite statutory history in your brief comes down to this. How does the writing professor want you to do it, if at all? The correct answer is for a writing assignment is always the way the professor wants. Started taking law classes for paralegals wanting to head toward con law and ended, probate. It's absolutely. You should do it because if it fascinates you, if you love the reasoning, if you feel like this is a thing you that's calling to you, that's the reason to do it. If you're like, maybe I can make better money doing this than computer engineering or software engineering. 1, you're probably wrong. 2, not a great reason. If you want to do it because you want a good 9 to 5 job, not a good reason. All right, other questions? Why am I calling you out, right? Other questions going once. Other questions going twice. Other questions going thrice. Solid. Okay. A reminder, Thursday next week, I have been informed by reliable sources, is a holiday in the United States. Ergo, I will not stream on Thursday next week. Reframe, how do you know if your judge cares? You research your judge. If your judge is the writing professor, you ask. Oh, can you archive this? Yeah, absolutely. Thursday, I've been informed, is Thanksgiving. I am actually not doing a lot of Thanksgiving. I may see if we can find a playthrough of a certain song that will not get silenced on the VOD. Even if it does, we may do it anyway. But anyway, I will stream on Tuesday instead. I will let you know on either Monday or Tuesday whether I will start the stream at the same time we've been running the streams or whether we're going to go an hour early. Translation, I need to make up my mind. It may also depend on a couple of different things. I'm leaning toward, you know what, let's split the difference. It'll start half an hour earlier. Reason for that being, I am way behind the rest of my group in the old school role-playing campaign that I'm in, and I promised folks that I would make the Tuesday session so that we can get my character caught up in the timeline to almost everybody else. Since I'm doing that, I'm going to want to leave the house by 5:30ish my time, so we'll start at 3:30 my time instead of 4. Until that time, until that time, my name is Mike. I am still a lawyer. I am still not your lawyer. But enjoy your weekend if you can't make the... how old school? AD&D 2nd edition? No. Wizard Works, this is old school role-playing campaign that is a homebrew system that was developed in the 1970s using chainmail as the foundation. On a good night, we can get through maybe 3, possibly 4 whole rounds of combat in an hour. You can miss an attack and kill via critical hit. It's a fun, absurd... We call the system this, which stands for This Horribly Intricate System. The group is ARG, which is, I believe, alternate reality... a historical research group. No, Rollmaster is the simplified version of what we're playing. I was in Hawaii from 2001 to 7, 11 to 15, and then 22 to now. This is an absurd homebrew system. It is played by the old... Basically... All right, so we usually play on Wednesdays, which is the same... It's the same campaign as when I left. We usually play on Wednesdays, which is also Adventurers League night. But we're like the middle-aged dudes sitting, in the front, BSing for the, hour and a half while the D&D folks are starting up. And it's fun. Anyway, back to where I was. Until next time, I'm Mike. I'm still a lawyer. I'm still not your lawyer, but have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your week. And if I don't see you on next Tuesday's stream, have a great week, a great Thanksgiving, and remember, everybody, you can get anything you want at Alice's restaurant, excepting Alice. Mahalo and aloha.